The voice in the walls. Ethan and Mia were thrilled when they moved into their new apartment. It was Ethan's first place on his own, a charming, slightly worn-down unit in a historic building on the quieter side of the city. The rent was surprisingly affordable for such a nice area, and the building had character: creaky wooden floors, high ceilings, and vintage moldings. It felt like a home, the kind of place where memories could be made. The apartment itself was cozy and just big enough. Ethan loved the sunroom, a bright corner where he planned to set up his art studio, and Mia adored the quaint little kitchen with its checkered tiles and window overlooking the busy street below. It was perfect, or so they thought. The first few days were filled with the usual excitement of unpacking boxes and decorating. Ethan spent hours arranging the new space, filling it with books, plants, and little trinkets that made it uniquely his. Mia painted the walls with warm, inviting colors, and every room slowly took on a comfortable, lived-in feel. It wasn't until the end of their first week that Ethan heard it, a faint, almost imperceptible whisper. He was sitting on the couch, reading a book late at night while Mia was asleep in the bedroom. At first, he thought it was just the creaking of the old building settling, but then it came again, a soft, hushed voice that seemed to be coming from somewhere inside the walls. Ethan froze, his eyes scanning the empty living room. He held his breath, straining to hear, but the whisper was gone. Shaking his head, he brushed it off as his imagination, tired from the long day of moving furniture and unpacking boxes. But the next night, the whisper returned, this time clearer, closer. Ethan sat up in bed, heart pounding, as the faint murmurs filled the room. They were indistinct, like someone speaking just out of earshot. Mia was fast asleep beside him, blissfully unaware of the noise that was now echoing in Ethan's mind. The following morning, Ethan casually mentioned the sound to Mia as they had breakfast. She laughed it off, suggesting it was probably just the neighbors or the pipes. But as the days went by, the whispers became more frequent and harder to ignore. Ethan started hearing them at odd times while cooking, brushing his teeth, or working in his studio. It always seemed to be a conversation, just out of reach, with words he could never quite make out. Ethan tried to rationalize it. He searched the apartment, tapping on walls and inspecting vents, thinking maybe it was some strange acoustics from the old building. But every time he thought he'd pinpointed the source, the whispers would shift, moving from one room to another, always one step ahead of him. One evening, as Ethan sat in the living room sketching, he heard the whispers again, this time louder than before. He put his pencil down and followed the sound to the hallway. He pressed his ear against the wall, straining to catch the words. He could almost hear them, a man's voice, low and gravelly, speaking urgently to someone else. "Who's there?" Ethan called out, feeling foolish even as he spoke. There was no response, just a faint rustling of whispers, as if mocking him. Frustrated, Ethan stepped back. He was certain it wasn't coming from the neighboring apartment. It was too clear, too distinct, and seemed to move, sometimes echoing from the ceiling, other times from the floor. Mia noticed Ethan's growing unease. He was becoming distracted, unable to focus on his art, and was constantly on edge, jumping at every little noise. She tried to comfort him, suggesting they call a building inspector or even a priest, half-jokingly, to ease his mind. But Ethan knew what he was hearing wasn't just old pipes or creaky floorboards. One night, the whispers took a sinister turn. Ethan was alone in the apartment, waiting for Mia to return from a late shift at work. The whispers started softly, but soon they were everywhere, echoing off the walls, growing louder, more insistent. Ethan's heart raced as he followed the sound to the kitchen, where it was loudest. He pressed his ear against the kitchen wall, and this time he heard it clearly. "Get out." Ethan stumbled back, his pulse pounding in his ears. The words were unmistakable, and the tone was filled with venom. He backed out of the kitchen, knocking over a glass in his haste. It shattered on the floor, but Ethan barely noticed. He fled to the living room, trying to calm himself, but the whispers followed, growing louder, repeating the same chilling command. Get out now." When Mia finally returned, she found Ethan pale and trembling on the couch. He tried to explain what he'd heard, but Mia, though worried, remained skeptical. She stayed with him, holding his hand as they listened together, but the apartment was silent, the whispers gone, as if mocking Ethan's inability to prove their existence. Over the next few days, Ethan became obsessed. He spent hours recording audio on his phone, hoping to catch the whispers, but every playback was silent. He scoured online forums, looking for explanations or similar stories, but found nothing that matched his experience. One evening, in a last-ditch effort, Ethan started tearing into the walls. He knocked out small sections, convinced there was someone hiding within. Mia watched helplessly as Ethan's behavior became more erratic, his eyes hollow with exhaustion and fear. "What are you hoping to find?" she asked, Her voice tinged with worry. I don't know, Ethan admitted, staring at the gaping hole he created in the living room wall. But it's there. I know it is.
Just then, the lights flickered, plunging the apartment into darkness. The whispers returned, louder and more furious than ever, surrounding them in a cacophony of voices. MIA clung to Ethan, finally hearing what he had been hearing all along. The voices were angry, demanding, as if trying to force them out. In a panic, they fled the apartment, leaving the lights flickering and the whispers echoing behind them. They spent the night in a nearby hotel, too shaken to return. The next morning, Ethan and MIA decided they couldn't stay in the apartment any longer. They packed their belongings in haste, leaving behind the damaged walls and whatever haunted the space between them. As they walked out the door for the last time, Ethan paused, turning back to the empty apartment. The whispers had stopped, but he could still feel them, like a presence lurking just out of sight, watching and waiting. They never found out the source of the voices, and they didn't want to. The building manager assured them that no one else had reported anything similar, but Ethan knew what he'd heard. As they drove away, Ethan glanced in the rearview mirror, watching the apartment building fade into the distance, its windows dark and empty. The whispers might have been silenced, but they would always linger in Ethan's mind, a chilling reminder that some places have secrets best left undisturbed. And sometimes, those secrets don't want to stay hidden, they want you gone.